the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Vana Parva. Section 6, Aranyaka Parva continued. Vasampayana said, O king, after Vidura had gone to the abode of the Pandavas, Dhritarashtra, O Bharata, of profound wisdom, repented of his action, and thinking of the great intelligence of Vidura in matters connected with both war and peace, and also of the aggrandizement of the Pandavas in the future, Dhritarashtra, pained at the recollection of Vidura, having approached the door of the hall of state, fell down senseless in the presence of the monarchs in waiting, and regaining consciousness, the king rose from the ground and thus addressed Sanjay standing by, My brother and friend is even like the God of justice himself. Recollecting him today, my heart burneth in grief. Go, bring unto me without delay my brother well versed in morality. Saying this, the monarch wept bitterly. And burning in repentance, and overwhelmed with sorrow at the recollection of Vidura, the king, from brotherly affection, again addressed Sanjay saying, O Sanjay, go thou and ascertain whether my brother, expelled by my wretched self through anger, liveth still. That wise brother of mine of immeasurable intelligence hath never been guilty of even the slightest transgression, but, on the other hand, he it is who hath come by grievous wrong at my hands. Seek him, O wise one, and bring him hither, else, O Sanjay, I will lay down my life. Vasampayana continued, hearing these words of the king, Sanjay expressed his approbation, and saying, So be it, went in the direction of the Kamyak woods. And arriving without loss of time at the forest where the sons of Pandu dwelt, he beheld Yudhishthira clad in deer skin, seated with Vidura, in the midst of Brahmanas by thousands and guarded by his brothers, even like Purandara in the midst of the celestials. And approaching Yudhishthira, Sanjay worshipped him duly, and was received with due respect by Bhima and Arjuna and the twins. And Yudhishthira made the usual enquiries about his welfare, and when he had been seated at his ease, he disclosed the reason of his visit, in these words, King Dhritarashtra, the son of Ambika hath, O Kshatta, remembered thee. Returning unto him without loss of time, do thou revive the king. And O thou best of men, with the permission of these Kuru princes, these foremost of men it behoveth thee, at the command of that lion among kings, to return unto him. Vasampayana continued, thus addressed by Sanjay, the intelligent Vidura, ever attached to his relatives, with the permission of Yudhishthira returned to the city named after the elephant. And after he had approached the king, Dhritarashtra of great energy, the son of Ambika addressed him saying, From my good luck alone O Vidura, thou O sinless one so conversant with morality, hast come here remembering me. And, O thou bull of the Bharata race, in thy absence I was beholding myself, sleepless through the day and the night as one that hath been lost on earth. And the king then took Vidura on his lap and smelt his head and said, Forgive me, O sinless one, the words in which thou wert addressed by me. And Vidura said, O king, I have forgiven thee. Thou art my superior, worthy of the highest reverence. Here am I, having come back, eagerly wishing to behold thee. All virtuous men, O tiger among men, are instinctively partial towards those that are distressed. This, O king, is scarcely the result of deliberation. My partiality to the Pandavas proceedeth from this cause. O Bharata, thy sons are as dear to me as the sons of Pandu, but as the latter are now in distress, my heart yearneth after them. Vasampayana continued, and addressing each other thus in apologetic speeches, the two illustrious brothers, Vidura and Dhritarashtra, felt themselves greatly happy. Thus ends the sixth section in the Aranyaka Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 7, Aranyaka Parva continued. Vasampayana said, hearing that Vidura had returned, and that the king had consoled him, the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra began to burn in grief. His understanding clouded by ignorance, he summoned the son of Suvala, and Karna and Dasasana, and addressed them saying, the learned Vidura, the minister of the wise Dhritarashtra, hath returned. The friend of the sons of Pandu, he is ever engaged in doing what is beneficial to them, so long as this Vidura doth not succeed in inducing the king to bring them back. Do ye all think of what may benefit me? If ever I behold the sons of Pritha return to the city, I shall again be emaciated by renouncing food and drink, even though there be no obstacle in my path. And I shall either take poison or hang myself, either enter the pyre or kill myself with my own weapons. But I shall never be able to behold the sons of Pandu in prosperity. Sakuni said, O king, O lord of the earth, what folly hath taken possession of thee? The Pandavas have gone to the forest, having given a particular pledge, so that what thou apprehendest can never take place. O bull of the Bharata race, the Pandavas ever abide by the truth. They will never, therefore, accept the words of thy father if however, accepting the commands of the king, they come back to the capital, violating their vow. Even this would be our conduct, viz., assuming an aspect of neutrality, and in apparent obedience to the will of the monarch, we will closely watch the Pandavas, keeping our counsels. Dasasana said, O uncle of great intelligence, it is even as thou sayest. The words of wisdom thou utterest always recommend themselves to me. Karna said, O Duryodhan, all of us seek to accomplish thy will, and, O king, I see that unanimity at present prevaileth among us. The sons of Pandu, with passions under complete control, will never return without passing away the promised period. If, however, they do return from failing sense, do thou defeat them again at dice. Vasampayana said, thus addressed by Karna, King Duryodhan with cheerless heart, averted his face from his counsellors. Marking all this, Karna expanding his beautiful eyes, and vehemently gesticulating in anger, haughtily addressed Duryodhan and Dasasana and Suvala's son saying, Ye princes, know ye my opinion. We are all servants of the king, Duryodhan, waiting upon him with joined palms. We should therefore do what is agreeable to him. But we are not always able to seek his welfare with promptness and activity, owing to our dependence on Dhritarashtra. But let us now, encased in mail and armed with our weapons, mount our cars and go in a body to slay the Pandavas now living in the forest. After the Pandavas have been quieted and after they have gone on the unknown journey, both ourselves and the sons of Dhritarashtra will find peace. As long as they are in distress, as long as they are in sorrow, as long as they are destitute of help, so long are we a match for them. This is my mind. Hearing those words of the charioteer's son, they repeatedly applauded him, and at last exclaimed, Very well. And saying this each of them mounted his car, and sanguine of success, they rushed in a body to slay the sons of Pandu. And knowing by his spiritual vision that they had gone out, the master Krishna-Dwaipayana of pure soul came upon them, and commanded them to desist. And sending them away, the Holy One, worshipped by all the worlds, quickly appeared before the king whose intelligence served the purposes of eyesight, and who was then seated at his ease. And the Holy One addressed the monarch thus. Thus ends the 7th section in the Aranyaka Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 8, Aranyaka Parva continued. Vyasa said, O wise Dhritarashtra, hear what I say. I will tell thee that which is for the great good of all the Kauravas. O thou of mighty arms, it hath not pleased me that the Pandavas have gone to the forest dishonestly defeated at dice by Duryodhan and others. O Bharata, on the expiration of the 13th year, recollecting all their woes, they may shower death-dealing weapons, even like virulent poison, upon the Kauravas. Why doth thy sinful son of wicked heart, ever inflamed with ire, seek to slay the sons of Pandu for the sake of their kingdom? Let the fool be restrained, let thy son remain quiet. In attempting to slay the Pandavas in exile, he will only lose his own life. Thou art as honest as the wise Vidura, or Bhishma, or ourselves or Kripa, or Drona, O thou of great wisdom. Dissension with one's own kin are forbidden, sinful and reprehensible. Therefore, O king, it behoveth thee to desist from such acts. And, O Bharata, Duryodhan looketh with such jealousy towards the Pandavas that great harm would be the consequence, if thou didst not interfere. Or let this wicked son of thine, O monarch, alone and unaccompanied, himself go to the forest and live with the sons of Pandu. For then, if the Pandavas, from association, feel an attachment for Duryodhan, then, O king of men, good fortune may be thine. This, however, may not be. For it hath been heard that one's congenital nature leaveth him not till death. But what do Bhishma and Drona and Vidura think? What also dost thou think? That which is beneficial should be done while there is time, else thy purposes will be unrealized. Thus ends the 8th section in the Aranyaka Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 9, Aranyaka Parva continued. Dhritarashtra said, O Holy One, I did not like this business of gambling, but, O Muni, I think I was made to consent to it drawn by fate. Neither Bhishma, nor Drona, nor Vidura, nor Gandhari liked this game at dice. No doubt, it was begot of folly. And, O thou who delightest in the observance of woes, O illustrious one, knowing everything yet influenced by paternal affection, I am unable to cast off my senseless son, Duryodhan. Vyasa said, O king, O son of Vichitravirya, what thou sayest is true. We know it well that a son is the best of all things and that there is nothing that is so good as a son. Instructed by the tears of Suravi, Indra came to know that the son surpasseth in worth other valuable possessions. O monarch, I will, in this connection, relate to thee that excellent and best of stories, the conversation between Indra and Suravi. In days of yore, Suravi, the mother of cows, was once weeping in the celestial regions. O child, Indra took compassion upon her, and asked her, saying, O auspicious one, why dost thou weep? Is everything well with the celestials? Hath any misfortune, ever so little, befallen the world of men or serpents? Suravi replied, No evil hath befallen thee that I perceive. But I am aggrieved on account of my son, and it is therefore, O Kaushika, that I weep. See, O chief of the celestials, yonder cruel husbandman is belaboring my weak son with the wooden stick, and oppressing him with the weight of the plough, in consequence of which my child, agitated with agony, is falling upon the ground and is at the point of death. At sight of this, O Lord of the celestials, I am filled with compassion, and my mind is agitated. The one that is the stronger of the pair is bearing his burden of greater weight with ease, but, O Vaswa, the other is lean, and weak and is a mass of veins and arteries. He beareth his burden with difficulty. And it is for him that I grieve. See, O Vaswa, sore inflicted with the whip, and harassed exceedingly, he is unable to bear his burden. And it is for him that moved by grief, I weep in heaviness of heart, and these tears of compassion trickled down my eyes. Sakra said, O fair one, when thousands of thy sons are daily oppressed, why dost thou grieve for one under infliction? Suravi replied, although I have 1,000 offspring, yet my affections flow equally towards all. But, O Sakra, I feel greater compassion for one that is weak and innocent. Vyasa continued, then Indra, having heard these words of Suravi, was much surprised, and, O thou of the Kuru race, he became convinced that a son is dearer than one's life. And the illustrious chastiser of Paka thereupon suddenly poured there a thick shower and caused obstruction to the husbandman's work. And as Survai said, thy affections, O king, equally flow towards all thy sons. Let them be greater towards those that are weak. And as my son Pandu is to me, so art thou, O son, and so also Vidura of profound wisdom. It is out of affection that I tell you all this. O Bharata, thou art possessed of 101 sons, but Pandu hath only 5. And they are in a bad plight and passing their days in sorrow. How may they save their lives? How may they thrive? Such thoughts regarding the distressed sons of Pritha continually agitate my soul. O King of the earth, if thou desirest all the Kauravas to live, let thy son Duryodhan make peace with the Pandavas. Thus ends the 9th section in the Aranyaka Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 10, Aranyaka Parva continued. Dhritarashtra said, O Muni of profound wisdom, it is even as thou sayest. I know it well, as do all these kings. Indeed, what thou considerest to be beneficial for the Kurus was pointed out to me, O Muni, by Vidura and Bhishma and Drona. And if I deserve thy favor, and if thou hast kindness for the Kurus, do thou exhort my wicked son Duryodhan. Vyasa said, O king, after having seen the Pandav brothers, here cometh the holy Rishi Maitreya, with the desire of seeing us. That mighty Rishi, O king, will admonish thy son for the welfare of this race. And, O Kavya, what he adviseth must be followed undoubtingly, for if what he recommendeth is not done, the sage will curse thy son in anger. Vasampayana continued, saying this, Vyasa departed, and Maitreya made his appearance. And the king with his son respectfully received that wayworn chief of Munis, with offerings of the Argya and other rites. And King Dhritarashtra, the son of Ambika, in words of respect thus addressed the sage, O holy one, hath journey from the Kurujangala been a pleasant one? Are those heroes, the 5 Pandavas, living happily? Do those bulls of the Kuru race intend to stay out their time? Will the brotherly affection of the Kauravas ever be impaired? Maitreya said, setting out on a pilgrimage to the different shrines, I arrived at Kurujangala, and there I unexpectedly saw Yudhishthira the just in the woods of Kamyak. And O exalted one, many munis had come there to behold the high-souled Yudhishthira, dwelling in an ascetic asylum, clad in deerskin and wearing matted locks. It was there, O King of Kings, that I heard of the grave error committed by thy sons and the calamity and the terrible danger arisen from dice that had overtaken them. Therefore it is that I have come to thee, for the good of the Kauravas, since, O exalted one, my affection is great for thee, and I am delighted with thee. O king, it is not fit that thy sons should on any account quarrel with one another, thyself and Bhishma living. Thou art, O king, the stake at which bulls are tied in treading cord, and thou art competent to punish and reward. Why dost thou overlook then this great evil that is about to overtake all? And, O descendant of the Kurus, for those wrongs that have been perpetrated in thy court, which are even like the acts of wretched outcasts, thou art not well thought of amongst the ascetics. Vasampayana continued, then turning to the wrathful Prince Duryodhan, the illustrious Rishi Maitreya addressed him in these soft words, O mighty armed Duryodhan, O best of all eloquent men, illustrious one, give heed unto the words I utter for my good. O king, seek not to quarrel with the Pandavas. And, O bull among men, compass thou thy own good as also of the Pandavas, of the Kurus and of the world. All those tigers among men are heroes of high prowess in war, gifted with the strength of 10,000 elephants, with bodies hard as the thunderbolt, holding fast by their promises, and proud of their manliness. They have slain the enemies of the celestials, those Rakshasas capable of assuming any form at will, such as were headed by Hidimban and Chimera. When those high-souled ones went from hence, that Rakshasa of fierce soul obstructed their nocturnal path even like an immovable hill. And even as a tiger slayeth a little deer, Bhima, that foremost of all endued with strength, and ever delighted in fight, slew that monster. Consider also, O king, how while out on his campaign of conquest, Bhima slew in battle that mighty warrior, Jasantha, possessing the strength of 10,000 elephants. Related to Vasudeva and having the sons of King Drupda as their brothers-in-law, who that is subject to decrepitude and death would undertake to cope with them in battle. O bull of the Bharata race, let there be peace between thee and the Pandavas. Follow thou my counsels and surrender not thyself to anger. O king, thus admonished by Maitreya, Duryodhan began to slap his thigh resembling the trunk of the elephant, and smilingly began to scratch the ground with his foot. And the wicked wretch spake not a word, but hung down his head. And, O monarch, beholding Duryodhan thus offer him a slight by scratching the earth silently, Maitreya became angry. And, as if commissioned by fate, Maitreya, the best of Munis, overwhelmed by wrath, set his mind upon cursing Duryodhan. And then, with eyes red in anger, Maitreya, touching water, caused the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra, saying, Since, slighting me thou declinest to act according to my words, thou shalt speedily reap the fruit of this thy insolence. In the great war which shall spring out of the wrongs perpetrated by thee, the mighty Bhima shall smash that thigh of thine with a stroke of his make. When the Muni had spoken so, King Dhritarashtra began to pacify the sage, in order that what he had said might not happen. But Maitreya said, O king, if thy son concludeth peace with the Pandavas, this curse of mine, O child, will not take effect, otherwise it must be as I have said. Vasampayana said, desirous of ascertaining the might of Bhima, that foremost of kings, the father of Duryodhan, then asked Maitreya, saying, How was Chimera slain by Bhima? Maitreya said, I shall not speak again unto thee, O king, for my words are not regarded by thy son. After I have gone away, Vidura will relate everything unto thee. And saying this, Maitreya went away to the place whence he had come. And Duryodhan also went out perturbed at the tidings of Chimera's death at the hand of Bhima. Thus ends the 10th section in the Aranyaka Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 11, Kimera Badliya Parva. Dhritarashtra said, O Kshatta, I am desirous to hear of the destruction of Kimera. Do thou tell me how the encounter took place between the Rakshasa and Bhimsena. Vidura said, listen to the story of that feat of Bhimsena of superhuman achievements. I have often heard of it in course of my conversation with the Pandavas while I was with them. O foremost of kings, defeated at dice the Pandavas departed from hence, and travelling for 3 days and nights they at length reached those woods that go by the name of Kamyak. O king, just after the dreadful hour of midnight when all nature is asleep, when man-eating Rakshasas of terrible deeds begin to wander, the ascetics and the cowherds and other rangers of the forest used to shun the woods of Kamyak and fly to a distance from fear of cannibals. And, O Bharata, as the Pandavas were at this hour entering those woods, a fearful Rakshasa of flaming eyes appeared before them with a lighted brand, obstructing their path. And with outstretched arms and terrible face, he stood obstructing the way on which those perpetuators of the Kuru race were proceeding. With 8 teeth standing out, with eyes of coppery hue, and with the hair of his head blazing and standing erect, the fiend looked like a mass of clouds reflecting the rays of the sun or mingled with lightning flashes and graced with flocks of cranes underneath on their wings. And uttering frightful yells and roaring like a mass of clouds charged with rain, the fiend began to spread the illusion proper to his species. Hearing that terrible roar, birds along with other creatures that live on land or in water, began to drop down in all directions, uttering cries of fear. And in consequence of the deer and the leopards and the buffaloes and the bears flying about in all directions, it seemed as if the forest itself was in motion. And swayed by the wind raised by the signs of the Rakshasa, creepers growing at a great distance seemed to embrace the trees with their arms of coppery leaves. And at that moment, a violent wind began to blow, and the sky became darkened with the dust that covered it. And as grief is the greatest enemy of the object of the 5 senses, even so appeared before the Pandavas that unknown foe of theirs. And beholding the Pandavas from a distance clad in black deerskins, the Rakshasa obstructed their passage through the forest even like the Mainka mountain. And at the sight of him never seen before, the lotus-eyed Krishna, agitated with fear, closed her eyes. And she whose braids had been dishevelled by the hand of Dasasana, stationed in the midst of the 5 Pandavas, looked like a stream chafing amid 5 hills. And seeing her overwhelmed with fear, the 5 Pandavas supported her as the 5 senses influenced by desire adhere to the pleasures relating to their objects. And Dharmya of great ascetic energy, in the presence of the sons of Pandu, destroyed the fearful illusion that had been spread by the Rakshasa, by applying various mantras calculated to destroy the Rakshasa. And beholding his illusion dispelled, the mighty Rakshasa of crooked ways, capable of assuming any form at will, expanded his eyes in wrath and seemed like death himself. Then King Yudhishthira, endued with great wisdom, addressed him saying, Who art thou, and whose son? Tell us what we should do for thee. The Rakshasa thus addressed, answered Yudhishthira the just, saying, I am the brother of Vaka, the celebrated Kimera. I live at ease in these deserted woods of Kamyak, daily procuring my food by vanquishing men in fight. Who are ye that have come near me in the shape of my food? Defeating ye all in fight, I will eat ye with pleasure. Vasampayana continued, O Bharata, hearing these words of the wretch, Yudhishthira announced his own name and lineage, saying, I am King Yudhishthira the Just, the son of Pandu, of whom thou mayst have heard. Deprived of my kingdom, I have, with my brothers Bhimsena and Arjuna and the others, in course of my wanderings, come into this terrible forest which is thy dominion, desirous of passing my period of exile here. Vidura continued, Kimira said unto Yudhishthira, by good luck it is that fate hath accomplished today my long accomplished desire. With weapons appraised have I been continually ranging the entire earth with the object of slaying Bhima. But Bhima I had found not. By good luck it is that that slayer of my brother, whom I had been seeking so long, hath come before me. It was he who in the disguise of a Brahmana slew my dear brother Vaka in the Vaitrekiya forest by virtue of his science. He hath truly no strength of arms. It is also this one of wicked soul who formerly slew my dear friend Hidimvan, living in this forest, and ravished his sister. And that fool hath now come into this deep forest of mine, when the night is half spent, even at the time when we wander about. Today I will wreak my long cherished vengeance upon him, and I will today gratify the manes of Vaka with his blood in plenty. By slaying this enemy of the Rakshasas, I shall today be freed from the debt I owe to my friend and my brother, and thereby attain supreme happiness. If Bhimsena was let free formerly by Vaka, today I will devour him in thy sight, O Yudhishthira. And even as Agastya ate up and digested the mighty Asura, Vatapi, I will eat up and digest this Bhima. Vidura continued, thus addressed by the Rakshasa, the virtuous Yudhishthira, steadfast in his pledges, said, it can never be so, and in anger rebuked the Rakshasa. The mighty armed Bhima then tore up in haste a tree of the length of 10 vyasas and stripped it of its leaves. And in the space of a moment the ever victorious Arjuna stringed his bow Gandiva possessing the force of the thunderbolt. And, O Bharata, making Jishnu desist, Bhima approached that Rakshasa still roaring like the clouds and said unto him, Stay, stay. And thus addressing the cannibal, and tightening the cloth around his waist, and rubbing his palms, and biting his nether lip with his teeth, and armed with the tree, the powerful Bhima rushed towards the foe. And like unto Magvat hurling his thunderbolt, Bhima made that tree, resembling the make of Yam himself, descend with force on the head of the cannibal. The Rakshasa, however, was seen to remain unmoved at that blow, and wavered not in the conflict. On the other hand, he hurled his lighted brand, flaming like lightning, at Bhima. But that foremost of warriors turned it off with his left foot in such a way that it went back towards the Rakshasa. Then the fierce Chimera on his part, all of a sudden uprooting a tree, darted to the encounter like unto the make-bearing Yam himself. And that fight, so destructive of the trees, looked like the encounter in days of yore between the brothers Vali and Sugriva for the possession of the same woman. And the trees struck at the heads of the combatants, were broken into slivers, like lotus stalks thrown on the temples of infuriated elephants. And in that great forest, innumerable trees, crushed like unto reeds, lay scattered as rags. That encounter with trees between that foremost of Rakshasa and that best of men, O thou bull of the Bharata race, lasted but for a moment. Then taking up a crag, the angry Rakshasa hurled it at Bhima standing before him, but the latter wavered not. Then like unto Rahu going to devour the sun dispersing his race with extended arms, the Rakshasa with outstretched arms darted towards Bhima, who had remained firm under the blow inflicted with the crag. And tugging at and grappling with each other in divers ways they appeared like two infuriated bulls struggling with each other. or like unto two mighty tigers armed with teeth and claws. The encounter between them waxed fierce and hard. And remembering their late disgrace at the hands of Duryodhan, and proud of the strength of his arms, and conscious also of Krishna looking at him, Vrikodra began to swell in vigor. And fired with anger, Bhima seized the Rakshasa with his arms, as one elephant in wrath seizeth another. And the powerful Rakshasa also in his turn seized his adversary. But Bhimsani, that foremost of all men endued with strength, threw the cannibal down with violence. The sounds that in consequence of those mighty combatants pressing each other's hands, were frightful and resembled the sounds of splintering bamboos. And hurling the Rakshasa down, seized him by the waist, and began to whirl him about, even as fierce hurricane shaketh a tree. And thus seized by the mighty Bhima, the fatigued Rakshasa became faint, and trembling all over, he still pressed the Pandav with all his strength. And finding him fatigued, Vrikodra twined his own arms round the foe, even as one bindeth a beast with cord. And the monster thereupon began to roar frightfully, as a trumpet out of order. And the mighty Vrikodra for a long while whirled the Rakshasa till the latter appeared to be insensible, and began to move convulsively. And finding the Rakshasa exhausted, the son of Pandu without loss of time took him up in his arms, and slew him like a beast. And placing his knee on the waist of that wretch of Rakshasa, Vrikodra began to press the neck of the foe with his hands. Then Bhima, dragging along the earth the bruised body of the Rakshasa with the eyelids about to close, said, O sinful wretch, thou wilt no more have to wipe away the tears of Hidimvan or Vaka, for thou too art about to go to the mansions of Yam. And saying this, that foremost of men, his heart filled with wrath, beholding the Rakshasa destitute of clothing and ornaments, and insensible, and undergoing convulsions, left him dead. And after that Rakshasa of hue like the clouds had been slain, the son of that best of kings, Pandu, praised Bhima for his many qualities, and placing Krishna in their front, set out for the Dvaita woods. Vidura said, It was thus, O Lord of men, that Kimera was slain in combat by Bhima, in obedience, O Kaurava, to the commands of Yudhishthira the just. And having rid the forest of its pest, the victorious Yudhishthira the just, began to live in that dwelling of theirs, with Draupadi. And those bulls of the Bharata race comforting Draupadi began to cheerfully extol Bhima with glad hearts. And after the Rakshasa had been slain, borne down by the might of Bhima's arms, those heroes entered into the peaceful forest freed from its annoyance. Passing through the great forest, I saw lying the body of the wicked and fearless Rakshasa slain by Bhima's might. And, O Bharata, there I heard of this achievement of Bhima from those Brahmanas who have assembled round the Pandavas. Vasampayana continued, hearing the account of the slaughter in combat of Kimera, that foremost of Rakshasa, the king sighed in sorrow and became absorbed in thought. Thus ends the 11th section in the Kimera Badliya Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 12, Arjun Vigamna Parva. Vasampayana said, hearing that the Pandavas had been banished, the Bhojas, the Vrishnis, and the Andhakas went to those heroes residing in affliction in the great forest. And the consanguineous relatives of Panchala, and Drishtaketu the king of Chedi, and those celebrated and powerful brothers the Kakeyas, their hearts fired with wrath, went to the forest to see the sons of Pritha. And reproaching the sons of Dhritarashtra, they said, What should we do? And those bulls of the Kshatriya race, with Vasudeva at their head, sat themselves down round Yudhishthira the just. And respectfully saluting that foremost of the Kurus, Keswa mournfully said, "The earth shall drink the blood of Duryodhan and Karna, of Dasasana and the wicked Sakuni. Slaying these in battle and defeating their followers along with their royal allies, will we all install Yudhishthira the just on the throne. The wicked deserve to be slain. Verily, this is eternal morality." Vasampayana continued, "And when on account of the wrongs of Pritha's sons, Janardana had thus got into a passion, and seemed bent upon consuming all created things, Arjuna exerted himself to pacify him. And beholding Keswa angry, Falguna began to recite the feats achieved in his former lives by that soul of all things, himself immeasurable, the Eternal One, of infinite energy, the Lord of Prajapati himself, the supreme ruler of the worlds, Vishnu of profound wisdom." Arjuna said, "In days of old, thou, O Krishna, hadst wandered on the Gandhamdana mountains for 10,000 years as a Muni having his home where evening fell. Living upon water alone, thou hadst, in days of old, O Krishna, also dwelt for full 11,000 years by the lake of Pushkara. And, O slayer of Madhu, with arms upraised and standing on one leg, thou hadst passed 100 years on the high hills of Vadari, one living all the while upon air. And leaving aside thy upper garment, with body emaciated and looking like a bundle of veins, thou hadst lived on the banks of the Saraswati, employed in thy sacrifice extending for 12 years. And, O Krishna of mighty energy, in observance of thy vow thou hadst stood on one leg for the length of 1,000 years of the celestials, on the plains of Prabhasa which it behoved the virtuous to visit. Vyasa hath told me that thou art the cause of the creation and its course. And, O Keswa, the Lord of Kshetra, thou art the mover of all minds, and the beginning and end of all things. All asceticism restates in thee, and thou too art the embodiment of all sacrifices, and the Eternal One. Slaying the Asura Narka, offspring of the earth first begotten, thou hadst obtained his earrings, and performed, O Krishna, the first horse sacrifice, offering up that Asura as the sacrificial horse. And, O Bull of all the worlds, having performed that feat, thou hast become victorious over all. Thou hadst slain all the Daityas and Danvas mustered in battle, and giving the Lord of C.I.E, Indra, the sovereignty of the universe, thou hast, O Keswa of mighty arms, taken thy birth among men. O slayer of all foes, having floated on the primordial waters, thou subsequently becamest Hari, and Brahma and Surya and Dharma, and Dhatri and Yam, and Anila, and Vayu, and Vaisravana, and Rudra, and Kala and the firmament, the earth, and the 10 directions. Thyself increate. Thou art the Lord of the mobile and the immobile universe, the creator of all, O thou foremost of all existences. And, O slayer of Madhu, O thou of abundant energy, in the forest of Chitraratha thou didst, O Krishna, gratify with thy sacrifice the chief of all the gods, the highest of the high. O Janardana, at each sacrifice thou didst offer, according to shares, gold by hundreds and thousands. And, O son of the Yadva race, becoming the son of Aditi, O exalted one of the supreme attributes, thou hast been known as the younger brother of Indra. And, O thou chastiser of foes, even while a child thou didst, O Krishna, in consequence of thy energy, fill by 3 steps only the heaven, the firmament, and the earth. And, O thou soul of all, covering the heaven and the firmament, while thou wert thus transformed, thou didst dwell in the body of the sun and afflict him with thy own splendor. And, O exalted one, In thy incarnations on those 1,000 occasions, thou hadst slain, O Krishna, sinful asuras by hundreds, by destroying the Mauravas and the Pashas, and slaying Nisanda and Nirka. Thou hast again rendered safe the road to Pragajyotisha. Thou hast slain Ahriti at Jaruti, and Kratha and Sisupala with his adherents, and Jasindha and Saivya and Satdhanvan. And on thy car roaring like unto clouds, and effulgent like the sun, thou didst obtain for thy queen the daughter of Goja, defeating Rukmi in battle. Thou didst in fury slay Indradyumna and the Yavna called Kasiruman. And slaying Salva the lord of Subha, thou didst destroy that city of Subha itself. These have all been slain in battle. Listen to me as I speak of others also slain by thee. At Travati thou hast slain King Bhoja equal unto Kartavirya in battle, and both Gopeti and Talaketu also have been slain by thee. And, O Janardana, thou hast also appropriated unto thyself the sacred city of Dwarka, abounding in wealth and agreeable unto the Rishi themselves, and thou wilt submerge it at the end within the ocean. O slayer of Madhu, how can crookedness be in thee, devoid as thou art, O thou of the Dasraha race, of anger and envy and untruth and cruelty? O thou who knowest no deterioration, all the rishis, coming unto thee seated in thy glory on the sacrificial ground, seek protection of thee. And, O slayer of Madhu, thou stayest at the end of the yuga, contracting all things and withdrawing this universe into thy own self, thou repressor of all foes. O thou of the Vrishni race, at the beginning of the yuga, there sprang from thy lotus-like navel, Brahma himself, and Lord of all mobile and immobile things, and whose is this entire universe? When the dreadful Danvas, Madhu and Katava were bent on slaying Brahma, beholding their impious endeavor, thou wert angry, and from thy forehead, O Hari, sprang Bambu, the holder of the trident. Thus these two foremost of the deities have sprung from thy body in order to do thy work. Even Narada it was who hath told me this. O Narayana, thou didst, in the forest of Chaitraratha, celebrate with plentiful gifts a grand sacrifice consisting of a multitude of rites. O God, O thou of eyes like lotus leaves, the deeds thou hast performed while still a boy, having recourse to thy might and aided by Valadeva, have never been done by others, nor are they capable of being achieved by others in the future. Thou didst even dwell in Kailas, accompanied by Brahmanas. Vasampayana continued, having addressed Krishna thus, the illustrious Pandav, who was the soul of Krishna, became dumb, when Janardana, in reply addressed that son of Pritha, saying, Thou art mine and I am thine, while all that is mine is thine also. He that hateth thee, hateth me as well, and he that followeth thee followeth me. O thou irrepressible one, thou art Nara and I am Narayana or Hari. We are the rishis Nara and Narayana born in the world of men for a special purpose. O Parth, thou art from me, and I am from thee. O bull of the Bharata race, no one can understand the difference that is between us. Vasampayana continued, when the illustrious Keswa had said so in the midst of that assembly of brave kings, all excited with anger, Panchali surrounded by Drishtadayumna and her other heroic brothers, approached him of eyes like lotus leaves seated with his cousins, and, desirous of protection, addressed in angry accents that refuge of all, saying, Asita and Devala have said that in the matter of the creation of all things, thou hast been indicated by the sages as the only Prajapati and the creator of all the worlds. And, O irrepressible one, Jamdagnya saith that thou art Vishnu, and, O slayer of Madhu, that thou art embodiment of sacrifice, sacrificer and he for whom the sacrifice is performed. And, O best of male beings, the rishis indicate thee as forgiveness and truth. Kasyapa hath said that thou art sacrifice sprung from truth. O exalted one, Narada calleth thee the god of the Sadhyas, and of the Shivas, as also the creator and the lord of all things. And, O tiger among men, thou repeatedly sportest with the gods including Brahma and Sankara and Sakra even as children sporting with their toys. And, O exalted one, the firmament is covered by thy head, and the earth by thy feet. These worlds are as thy womb, and thou art the eternal one. With rishis sanctified by Vedic lore and asceticism, and whose souls have been purified by penance, and who are contented with soul vision, thou art the best of all objects. And, O chief of all male beings, thou art the refuge of all royal sages devoted to virtuous acts, never turning their backs on the field of the battle, and possessed of every accomplishment. Thou art the Lord of all, thou art omnipresent, thou art the soul of all things, and thou art the active power pervading everything. The rulers of the several worlds, those worlds themselves, the stellar conjunctions, the 10 points of the horizon, the firmament, the moon, and the sun, are all established in thee. And, O mighty armed one, the mortality of earthly creatures, the immortality of the universe, are established in thee. Thou art the supreme Lord of all creatures, celestial or human. Therefore it is, O slayer of Madhu, that impelled by the affection thou bearest me, that I will relate to thee my griefs. O Krishna, how could one like me, the wife of Pritha's sons, the sister of Drishtadayumna, and the friend of thee, be dragged to the assembly? Alas, during my season, stained with blood, with but a single cloth on, trembling all over, and weeping, I was dragged to the court of the Kurus. Beholding me, stained with blood in the presence of those kings in the assembly, the wicked sons of Dhritarashtra laughed at me, O slayer of Madhu, while the sons of Pandu and the Panchalas and the Vrishnis lived, they dared express the desire of using me as their slave. O Krishna, I am according to the ordinance, the daughter-in-law of both Dhritarashtra and Bhishma. Yet, O slayer of Madhu, they wished to make of me a slave by force. I blamed the Pandav as who are mighty and foremost in battle, for they saw without stirring their own wedded wife known over all the world, treated with such cruelty. O fie on the might of Bhimsena, fie on the Gandiva of Arjuna, for they, O Janardana, both suffered me to be thus disgraced by little men. This eternal course of morality is ever followed by the virtuous viz, that the husband, however weak, protecteth his wedded wife. By protecting the wife one protecteth his offspring, and by protecting the offspring one protecteth his own self. One's own self is begotten on one's wife, and therefore it is that the wife is called Jaya. A wife also should protect her lord, remembering that he is to take his birth in her womb. The Pandav as never forsake the person that solicited their protection, and yet they abandoned me who solicited it. By my 5 husbands 5 sons of exceeding energy have been born of me, Prativindya by Yudhishthira, Sutasoma by Vrikodra, Srutekirti by Arjuna, Satanika by Nakula and Sritkarman by the youngest, all of them of energy that cannot be baffled. For their sake, O Janardana, it was necessary to protect me. Even as thy son Pradyumna, they are, O Krishna, mighty warriors all. They are foremost of bowmen, and invincible in battle by any foe. Why do they bear the wrongs inflicted on me by the sons of Dhritarashtra of such contemptible strength? Deprived of their kingdom by deception, the Pandavas were made bondsmen, and I myself was dragged to the assembly while in my season, and having only a single cloth on. Fie on that Gandiva which none else can string save Arjuna and Bhima and thyself, O slayer of Madhu. Fie on the strength of Bhima, and fie on the prowess of Arjuna, since, O Krishna, Duryodhan after what he had done hath drawn breath even for a moment. He it is, O slayer of Madhu, who formerly drove the guileless Pandavas with their mother from the kingdom, while they were children still engaged in study and the observance of their vows. It is that sinful wretch who, horrible to relate, mixed in Bhima's food fresh and virulent poison in full dose. But, O Janardana, Bhima digested that poison with the food, without sustaining any injury, for, O best of men and mighty armed one, Bhima's days had not been ended. Krishna, it is Duryodhan who at the house standing by the banyan called Pramana bound Bhima sleeping unsuspectingly, and casting him into the Ganges returned to the city. But the powerful Bhimsena the son of Kunti, possessed of mighty arms, on waking from sleep, tore his bonds and rose from the water. It is Duryodhan, who caused venomous black cobras to bite all over the body of Bhimsena, but that slayer of foes died not. Awaking, the son of Kunti smashed all the serpents and with his left hand killed the agent, who is the favorite charioteer of Duryodhan. Again, while the children were lying asleep at Varnavata with their mother, it is he who set fire to the house intending to burn them to death. Who is there capable of doing such an act? It was then that the illustrious Kunti, overtaken by this calamity, and surrounded by the flames, began to cry out in terror, speaking to her children, Alas, I am undone. How shall we escape from this fire today? Alas, I shall meet with destruction with my little children. Then Bhimsena Bhima, possessed of mighty arms, and prowess like unto the force of the wind, comforted his illustrious mother as also his brothers, saying, like that king of birds, Gadura, the son of Vinta, then taking his mother on his left flank, and the king in his right, and the twins on each shoulder, and Vivatsu on his back, the mighty Vrikodra, thus taking all of them, at one leap cleared the fire and delivered his mother and brother from the conflagration. Setting out that night with their renowned mother, they came near the forest of Hidimvan. And while fatigued and distressed, they were sleeping fast with her, a Rakshasa woman called Hidimvan approached them. Beholding the Pandavas with their mother asleep on the ground, influenced by desire she sought to have for her lord. The weak one then took up Bhima's feet on her lap to press them with her soft hands. The mighty Bhima of immeasurable energy, of prowess that could not be baffled, then woke from sleep, and asked her, saying, O thou of faultless features, what dost thou wish here? Thus asked by him, the Rakshasa lady of faultless features, capable, besides, of assuming any form at will, replied unto the high-souled Bhima, saying, Do ye speedily fly from this place. My brother gifted with strength will come to slay ye. Therefore speed and tarry not. But Bhima haughtily said, I do not fear him. If he cometh here, I will slay him. Hearing their converse, that vilest of cannibals came to the spot. Of frightful form and dreadful to behold, uttering loud cries as became, the Rakshasa said, O Hidimvan, with whom dost thou converse? Bring him unto me, I will eat him up. It behoveth thee to tarry not, but moved by compassion, the Rakshasa lady of faultless features and pure heart said nothing out of pity. Then the man-eating monster, uttering dreadful cries, rushed at Bhima with great force, and approaching him furiously, The mighty cannibal, possessed with rage, caught hold of Bhima's hand with his own and clenching fast his other hand and making it hard as the thunderbolt of Indra, suddenly struck Bhima a blow that descended with the force of lightning. His hand having been seized by the Rakshasa, Vrikodra, without being able to brook it, flew into a rage. Then a dreadful combat took place between Bhimsena and Hidimvan, both skilled in all weapons and which was like unto the encounter of Vasva with Vritra. And, O sinless one, after sporting with the Rakshasa for a long while, the powerful Bhima of mighty energy slew the cannibal when the latter had become weak with exertion. Then having slain Hidimvan, and taking his sister, Hidimvan at their head, of whom was subsequently born Gatotkacha, Bhima and his brothers went away. Then all those repressors of their foes, accompanied by their mother and surrounded by many Brahmanas, proceeded towards Ekachakra. In the matter of this their journey, Vyasa, ever engaged in their welfare, had become their counsellor. Then arriving at Ekachakra, the Pandavas of rigid vows there also slew a mighty cannibal, Vaka by name, terrible as Hidimvan himself. And having slain that fierce cannibal, Bhima, that foremost of smiters, went with all his brothers to the capital of Drupta. And, O Krishna, as thou hadst acquired Rukmini, the daughter of Bhishmaka, even so Savyasachin, while residing there, obtained me. O slayer of Madhu, Arjuna won me in the Swayambara, having performed a feat difficult of achievement by others and having fought also with the assembled kings. Thus, O Krishna, afflicted with numerous griefs and in great distress, am I living, with Dharmya at our head, but deprived of the company of the adorable Kunti. Why do these that are gifted with strength and possessed of the prowess of the lion, sit indifferently, beholding me thus afflicted by enemies so despicable, suffering such wrongs at the hands of wicked and evil-doing foes of small strength? Am I to burn in grief so long? Born I was in a great race, coming into the world in an extraordinary way. I am also the beloved wife of the Pandavas, and the daughter-in-law of the illustrious Pandu, the foremost of women and devoted to my husbands. Even I, O Krishna, was seized by hair. O slayer of Madhu, in the sight of the Pandavas, each of whom is like an Indra himself. Saying this, the mild-speeched Krishna hid her face with her soft hands like the buds of lotus, and began to weep. And the tears of Panchali, begot of grief, washed her deep, plump and graceful breasts crowned with auspicious marks. And wiping her eyes and sighing frequently, she said these words angrily and in a choked voice: husbands, or sons, or friends, or brothers, or father, have I none. Nor have I thee, O thou slayer of Madhu, for ye all, beholding me treated so cruelly by inferior foes, sit still unmoved. My grief at Karna's ridicule is incapable of being assuaged. On these grounds I deserve to be ever protected by thee, O Keswa, viz., our relationship, thy respect for me, our friendship, and thy lordship over me. Vasampayana continued, in that assembly of heroes Vasudeva then spake unto the weeping Draupadi as follows: O fair lady, the wives of those with whom thou art angry, shall weep even like thee, beholding their husbands dead on the ground, weltering in blood, and their bodies covered with the arrows of Vivatsu. I weep not, lady, for I will exert to the utmost of my power for the sons of Pandu. I promise thou shalt once more be the queen of kings. The heavens might fall, or the Himamvat might split, the earth might be rent, or the waters of the ocean might dry up, but my words shall never be futile. Hearing those words of Achyuta in reply, Draupadi looked obliquely at her third husband Arjuna. And, O my Mighty king, Arjuna said unto Draupadi, O thou of beautiful coppery eyes, grieve not. O illustrious one, it shall be even as the slayer of Madhu hath said, it can never be otherwise, O beautiful one. Drishtadayumna said, I will slay Drona, Siknading will slay the grandfather, and Bhimsena will slay Duryodhana, and Dhananjaya will slay Karna. And, O sister, assisted by Rama and Krishna, we are invincible in battle by even the slayer himself of Vritra. What are the ons of Dhritarashtra? Vasampayana continued, after these words had been spoken, all the heroes there turned their faces towards Vasudeva, who then in their midst began to speak as follows. Thus ends the 12th section in the Arjun Vigamna Parva of the Vana Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.